Welcome to our podcast tonight. Well, tonight is pretty eye opening and pretty timely. We're going to look at America abortion and the worship of Molech. Molech is the god that was worshipped there in the Old Testament. And we're going to see a correlation between what happened in the Old Testament to what is happening even here today. So, my question is this: are we becoming worse than Sodom and Gomorrah? And are we going to owe Sodom and Gomorrah an apology? And I'm going to throw a little bit of history tonight, a little history into Planned Parenthood as well. Okay, tonight, America, abortion, and the worship of Molech. Okay, get ready. Let's go. A few months ago, I was shocked when I turned the TV on to see the vitriolic poison that dripped from the lips of the pro-abortion crowds. When I turned the TV on, made me sick. It was a response to the Supreme Court's decision on Roe versus Wade. And so the Supreme Court decided that it was unconstitutional. We already knew that for years, that it's a state issue and that each state must decide on their own what to do with abortion. Well, this pro-death crowd, they went ballistic. Acting like crazy, rabid dogs, animalistic savages, shouting things like, "We want to kill your babies. We're going to get your babies. We're going to kill your babies." This is crazy. And this is much more than crazy. I think it's much more than mentally insane. There's a real demonic component to this as well. And now it's even deciding elections in some places, that is, in a very negative way. So I think we might have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah, because right now America is moving in a terrible place. And really, in actuality, we're actually really discovering who these people really are. And one big example, I'll give this to you, and I think I've got my phone somewhere. Let me grab my phone here because I think I have it here on the phone as well. One big example is the Cosmopolitan magazine. You know what Cosmopolitan is, right? The largest media brand in the world for young women. 4.2 million followers on Instagram. Magazines are in almost every grocery store. They had 3 posts encouraging young women to have a satanic abortion ceremony. Let me pull this up right here if I can pull this up on my phone. I just found it the other day. I want to make sure that you can see it as well. I'm going to get all the way back here. Let's see here. I pulled up some information on it. Oh, here. Well, here's one. Let me get this one for you a little bit, just to give you an example of what was actually going on here. You see, what happened is when they had Roe versus Wade, this Satanic Temple in New Mexico, they decided they were going to start their own abortion clinic. And actually, it was an online clinic. They had their own pharmacy and everything. But they named it. Are you ready for the name? Remember, Sam Alito is the conservative. He's a Catholic that's on the Supreme Court. One of the people that voted against Roe versus Wade, voting it was unconstitutional. So they created this online abortion clinic called the Samuel Alito's Moms, but she has nothing to do with this. The Samuel Alito's Moms Satanic Abortion Clinic. And what they do is provide the abortion pill for anybody who says they want it. But they went a little farther than that, is they provide a ceremony, a satanic ceremony. Now it says here that they already have over 700,000 followers. And so they've taken that, and so Cosmopolitan magazine picked it up sent out to all these young ladies. How does a satanic abortion ceremony work? Now what's really fascinating is what I've said for years, and many people have said for years. Abortion does have a satanic component. You see, abortion is child sacrifice, whether you want to admit it or not. So they would say things like look into the mirror, say some dribble, and go through this ceremonial weirdness. But here's something. At the very end, you take your abortion pill that abortion that kills the baby in your womb. But at the end of the mirror, you look and say this: by my body, my blood, by my will, it is done. There are some Catholic priests, and I agree with them, that this is mocking the Last Supper, mocking what Jesus said at the Last Supper. He says, by my body, my blood. Jesus said, this is my body. This is my blood that was shed for you at the Last Supper. And he said, it is finished. They're mocking the Last Supper. Now, let me show you a couple of verses before we really kind of dig into it a little deeper. I'm going to go to 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 17. 2 Kings 17:17. I want you to listen to these. And by the way, I could give you 100 verses on this subject. So here's 2 Kings 17. Is that right? Here it is. Here it is, listen to this. And they caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire. That is the worship of Molech. That means basically we sacrificed our sons and daughters. They caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire, practiced witchcraft and soothsaying, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord and to provoke him to anger. Now listen to Deuteronomy 18:10. Deuteronomy 18:10. Listen to this. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire. This is the worship of Molech. This is killing your kids. All right, pass through the fire, or one who practices witchcraft or soothsaying, or one who interprets omens or sorcerers, or one who conjures spells, a medium or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. Now, these two verses right here, and I could give you 100 more. Say clearly, abortion is child sacrifice. Abortion is connected to sorcery and witchcraft. Abortion is satanic. And just a brief aside, the book, you've heard of the book of Enoch, right? Okay, it's not in the canon because it's not part of the canon at all, and it should not be. But what the book of Enoch is, not Enoch 2 and 3, but the Enoch 1, is really a history that's backed up in the Bible, backed up in ancient Jewish writings as well. Very interesting, the book of Enoch. And in the book of Enoch, he talks about the angels that fell, that had relations with the daughters of men there in Genesis 6. The fifth angel that's named is called Tamiel, Tamiel. And it says here, listen to this, I'm paraphrasing. Tamiel taught man how to kill their babies in the womb. It says that this angel Tamiel taught the men how to strike the womb, how to strike their babies, and thereby getting rid of the child. Well, if it's true, it's just another evidence that this is so satanic and demonic. America, abortion, and the worship of Molech. Life is a gift from God. Life is a miracle. Life is a wonder. All lives matter, man. And we find out the more science discovers, the more wonders and the awesomeness of the gift of life becomes. Creation reveals God. Our bodies reveal God. Conception reveals God. Birth reveals God. The miracle of life is the evidence that there even is a God. So we're going to see that he is the author of life, and that he is personally and intimately involved with conception, development, and the birth of the human child as well. You know, he's not just the God of the deists. You know, people said, well, the deists, they think many of the founding fathers were deists, and they were not deists. Some might be, but many of them were not. The ones who they say are deists were not really deists if you actually look at their writings and what they believed. But we know that God is a transcendent God. The deists would say that God created the world and wound it up like a big clock and set it to the side and walked away. That's not God. God is a transcendent God. Trans means to go above or go across. And yes, he is. But the amazing thing about God, he's also an immanent God. That means he has chosen to reveal himself to man. So he's not only a God that's far away, he's a God that's close with each and every one of us. He is a God who is near. He is a God who is involved with human affairs. He is a God who is intricately involved with human life. God is part of this birth process. According to the Declaration of Independence, life, the gift of life, is an unalienable right. It's a natural right from God. And the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution states that a person or life cannot be deprived without due process. When you abort a baby, and if it's a life, you've just violated the Fifth Amendment. The 14th Amendment says is guaranteed equal protection for its citizens. If you're born in this country, you become a citizen. All violated by abortion. And to top that, God says it's wrong and God says it's a sin. So here's the big question. When does life begin? Well, I believe the Bible clearly teaches that life begins at conception. And even before that, Jeremiah said that, God, you knew me before I was birthed in my mother's womb. So God knew these people. Listen to what others say about abortion. The Representative Cori Bush, the leftist in our Congress, she says this: abortion is an act of love. Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, helmet head, as I call her, she needs a good new haircut, this Democrat, she says abortion helps our economy. Listen to this sickness. Here's another one. Planned Parenthood said abortion is sacred. So the Satanic Temple is saying that. They're saying that abortion is and they say we are including abortion as a ritual, as a religious rite. That's sick. Protester, I heard a protester yell, abortion is our religion. Another protester yelled out, abortion is reproductive health care. Abortion is health care? Well, not for the baby. Abortion is a constitutional right, they yelled out. Well, that's gone. Abortion, here's the HR bellicosa, all right? Abortion is health care. Abortion is freedom. Abortion is autonomy. A country without human rights is not a free country. And here's another leftist said this: I wouldn't have a beautiful family now if I hadn't had access to abortion. She said I had to abort my first baby in order to have a beautiful family now. Isn't that wonderful? But you killed your first baby. And my favorite anti-abortion quote is from President Ronald Reagan. He said this, listen closely: I've noticed that everybody that is for abortion has already been born. And that kind of reminds me of Planned Parenthood. I want to give you just a very brief look at Planned Parenthood. I just put some notes together here, and so I don't want to spend a lot of time, and I could spend a lot of time, but let me give you a very brief history of Planned Parenthood. The first Planned Parenthood Center was October 16th, ready for this, 1916. And it was opened up in Brooklyn, New York. They had the first birth control center, they called it, in Brooklyn, New York, October 16th, 1916. Margaret Sanger, don't forget that name, and her sister, and another woman named Ethel Byrne got together and created this abortion clinic. About 80% of these abortion clinics, listen to this, are located today in minority sections of cities and neighborhoods. So my question was this: why would you put a abortion clinic that, aborts babies? Why would you put them in minority areas? This is where Margaret Sanger, many, many years ago, wanted those to be put in minority areas in cities and neighborhoods. Why? Because she was a racist. She was a proponent of eugenics. Eugenics is the science of improving the human race by controlling breeding. The Nazis picked up on that. Remember the master race? They picked up on Margaret Sanger. They were involved in what she was doing. They looked at it. They studied her. She advocated control on the procreation of those she deemed unfit. Here's the people she deemed unfit: Jews, blacks, the mentally retarded. Chinese, and believe it or not, Italians. They were all deemed mentally. I'm Italian. Can you believe it? Italians being mentally unfit. We are a crazy bunch, but we're definitely not mentally unfit. She denounced marriage as a degenerate institution. She said this: the most merciful thing a large family could do to a new baby was to kill it. She used birth control and sterilization to weed out the poor and the unfit. Her teaching and writing were read by the fascists and Nazis in Europe, all right? And she was and by the way, they're read today by the crazy, kooky climate kooks of today as well. She was a full-fledged racist. This, my friend, are the roots of Planned Parenthood. So all these crazy people that said, oh my gosh, we just, and by the way, guess who got the Margaret Sanger Award? Hillary Clinton. Many others. All right. There is a revival today of abortion. And abortion is nothing but the continuation of the worship of the god Molech. The Bible is very clear, we'll get to that in a second, that when you worship idols, you're actually worshiping a demon. All right? It is the religion of child sacrifice. I have a video of a lady on YouTube. I've had this for a few months now. And in here, she takes you through having the abortion, the ceremony of a satanic abortion. Never realized what I was watching, so I went through the whole thing. But this weirdness, she said, and about how lovely it was, and how soothing, and how healing it was, and how much peace it brought to your life when you aborted that baby. She told you about taking the pill and lighting this candle and saying a mantra. If you can find the video, if I ever get a chance, maybe I can get it to you. Here's the history of Molech. Listen to what the Bible says. I think I've marked these verses. Let's see, Leviticus 18:21. The Bible itself speaks about worship of Molech. And let's see, here it is, 18. Listen to this. I'll read a few. I'll try to have these verses here underneath the video. 18. Now you shall not watch this. And you shall not let any of your descendants pass through the fire to Molech, nor shall you profane the name of God. I am the Lord. Leviticus 20, beginning verse 1. And the Lord said, again you shall say to the children of Israel, whoever of the children of Israel, or of the strangers who dwell in Israel, who gives any of his descendants to Molech, he shall surely be put to death, and the people of the land shall stone him with stones. 2 verses there. Don't allow your children to be sacrificed to Molech. Let's see. Do I have 1 Kings? I might be. 1 Kings 11. Let's see. Let me go all the way up here. I think I did. 1 Kings 11, verse 6 and 8. Let's get to that verse real quick here. All right. Here it is. Listen to this. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord. Idiot Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and did not fully follow the Lord as did his father David. And Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the people of the Ammonites, Ammon. And he did likewise for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. Why in the world did he allow the worship of Molech? Another name for Molech was Chemosh. Why was the worship of Molech such a big deal? For many reasons, right? But you go to Leviticus 17:7, Deuteronomy 32:16-17. But listen to what Paul said over in 1 Corinthians. I'll bring you up to the New Testament, okay? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 20. Listen to this. Now see, we gloss over verses, but don't gloss over this one. Rather that things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons. Let me read that again. Did you miss that? Rather the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to demons and not to God. I do not want you to have fellowship with demons. Paul is saying the same thing that is said in the Old Testament. Do not sacrifice your babies to idols, you are sacrificing to demons, notwithstanding that you take the young child's life. Molech was an ancient Canaanite god. He demanded the sacrifice of children to appease him. They would be rewarded. Watch. If you could sacrifice your firstborn child or your children to Molech, you would be rewarded with prosperity and blessing and provision. And Molech, this demon, demanded child sacrifice in order to be appeased. There is a demonic power behind the worship of Molech. Idols. There's a demonic power behind idol worship. And my friend, I'm sorry, there is a demonic power behind abortion, behind child sacrifice. Destroying a baby is an attempt to disrupt and destroy God's creation. We are made in God's image, and this is the destruction of the image of God. Molech in history had many names. Sometimes they called him Milcom, Malcolm, Kronos, Haman, Saturn. The Moabites called him Chemosh. He became the chief god of the Ammonites, all right? And King Solomon erected altars, as we saw there a little while ago, to honor Molech in the Valley of Hinnom. We'll get to the Valley of Hinnom. That's an interesting place. And by the way, Josiah became king. He destroyed the idols and rebuilt them, and Jehoiakim rebuilt these. Molech was worshipped by the evil king Manasseh. Molech was and is a very strong demonic power. And let me say this. Molech is a strong demonic power, but Molech is alive today. Molech did not die. Molech went underground, and I believe he's alive today. And this demon power is one of the demonic powers behind, one of the many demonic powers pushing the abortion of our children. Now, let me describe Molech. We have a picture. We're going to put a picture on our thumbnail right at the very beginning. When you see and you'll see this God with his hands open, wide. And look, you got to pay attention to his hands, who he is. Molech had the body of a man, the head of a bull, made of bronze with 3 eyes. It was a giant statue. The arms were extended forward in almost a gentle acceptance of the offering. A fire would be built at the base of this god, all right? A bronze metallic god. And the fire would be fed with coals. And when that fire increased, the heat would be conducted through the entire statue. And watch, once the heat would reach the arms, it was ready to receive the offering. Molech wanted infants less than a year old. And the worst, just listen to this, okay? Sorry to share this with you, but let's get real. If you actually understood what happens in a baby when a baby's aborted, it would make you sick. They try to hide that. Planned Parenthood does not want you to see a sonogram. When the people, they get away from the sonogram because you see a baby moving in the mother's stomach. So the child would be handed over to the priest. He would lay the child in the demon's palms. The baby would be incinerated quickly. You would see a column of white smoke come up like butter on a hot grill. At the beginning, the child would experience terrible pain, and its shrieks would fill the air, and suddenly it was then dead. But they had musicians. Listen to it. They had musicians who would beat drums, and some had trumpets and cymbals to drown out the baby's cries as he was dying. And to distract the parents as well, right? Who were counseled. The parents were counseled. Now, don't you cry. If you cry while your baby's being killed and burned up, you would not be blessed. Molech will not bless you with prosperity if you cry. Molech's belly was open sometimes, and sometimes the baby was even tossed into the fire. Now that brings me up to the Valley of Hinnom and Gehenna. Watch. They built these high places of worship in the Valley of Hinnom. So don't forget the word Gehenna. We'll get that in a second. Gehenna. And so in the Valley of Hinnom, where Solomon had built, right, these worship places, these high places, it became the official worship center of Baal and Molech. That was the valley of Hinnom. And Jeremiah said it was connected directly to the worship of Molech in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 31. Jeremiah chapter 19, verse 6. He said the valley was connected to the worship of this god. Later in Jesus' day, Hinnom, that valley, became Gehenna. Gehenna, outside of Jerusalem, was the garbage dump of Jerusalem. And you would dump your garbage, you would dump dead animals and corpses who were burned. Now, if you're a deceased criminal, they would drag your body and to put you out there in Gehenna, out this fire, because there's a fire going on, right, to burn up the refuse. If you were a leper and you died, your body was dragged out there as well. It had a perpetual stench. Fire, flies, maggots. The Old Testament is filled with scriptures about Gehenna and about Hinnom, and in the New Testament as well. Jesus even mentioned Gehenna 11 times in the New Testament. Even the apostles talked about Gehenna. Why? Because they use this garbage dump of Jerusalem to describe hell as a violent, disgusting place. He says, where the worm never dies, with maggots and refuse and stench. He said, this is hell. Hell is a place of everlasting destruction. Fire always burning, stench, ugly, the smell of sulfur, the Bible said, a place of filth. And here's a warning. Let me get some more coffee on this one. Watch. There will be a severe judgment on any nation that murders their young. And if anything is the tipping point for our country, is our nation killing millions of babies every year. The Nazis carried Jewish children to the killing fields and the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Stalin starved peasant children in Ukraine. The Aztecs and the Mayans sacrificed both children and adults to their vile gods. Exposing unwanted children to the natural elements or the wild animals, that was a common practice throughout the Greco-Roman world. The Carthaginians of North Africa for centuries sacrificed their infants and children to pagan gods. The Jews in the Old Testament were guilty of adopting the evil Canaanite practice of sacrificing their children to false gods, to demons. Jeremiah 19 speaks all about that. And you know what, my friends? This ancient sword of Damocles hangs over America's head. That sword that is held over, as the story goes, by just a thin horse's hair, that hangs over our heads. We are close to the tipping point. God will not turn a blind eye to the killing of babies that were created in his image. And can I add something to that? Not only is America guilty of that, but we're guilty of 85 to 100,000 children who have been sacrificed coming across the border. What do you mean by sacrifice? These children that are experiencing being sexually trafficked, that are disappearing in this country. Our government is actually, I don't want to say behind that, but our government is assisting the cartels. Okay, I'm not saying they're doing it purposely, all right? But no matter what, they're helping the cartels bring these children without family, and they're getting lost in the country. I believe that most of them are being sex trafficked. Some are actually in doing menial labor, all right, child labor, all right? And I hate to say this, there's the possibility that some are even being sacrificed as well. That is a warning for our country. We might have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. And we think we're all this and that and everything. Let me tell you what. Sodom and Gomorrah was evil. But my friend, there is so much corruption in our country right now. I thank God for every Christian who is standing up and has the courage to speak out. I thank God for every politician who has courage to stand up and speak out against this evil. And I've said this probably 10 million times. The one thing we need more than anything else in America is courage. And courage to stand up in love and speak out. These things must be spoken out against. And I will say something else. If you had an abortion, I want you to know God forgives you. You did it in ignorance. You didn't understand. You didn't know. You can come to the God of the Bible and you can say, Father, I ask you to forgive me for taking that child's life. I did not know that was a baby in my womb. God, I trust you as my Savior today. I ask you, Father, to forgive me. I believe that you died on the cross. I believe that you rose again from the dead. I believe in your resurrection. And I commit my whole life to you and ask you to save me today. Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, and your sins will be forgiven, past, present, and future. Amen? That's kind of cool, isn't it? I promise you this. There's a possibility, maybe next week, or maybe the week after, maybe who knows. I want to take Psalm 139. I want to show you from the Bible and from science how the baby that is in your womb at conception is a human being and not a blob of flesh. All right. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Good night. God bless. Hey, please like and subscribe and share.